Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Story Darlings podcast. I'm Sandra.
And I'm Tera.
And what are we talking about today, Tera?
We are going to discuss Queen of Shadows, Part 2.
But before we get into it, I just want to give Vanessa a shout out. Thank you for asking where to find our podcast. We've been doing this on YouTube. You can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and we're also at anchor.fm Story Darlings. You can go to any of those places and find us. And it is a video podcast, so I know Spotify, you can watch us too. So those are all the places that you can find us. So thank you for asking. And everyone that's been listening and following along and doing the reading journey with us, thank you so much for participating because it has been so much fun getting to read these books with Tera.
It has been fun getting to share my hot takes and first impressions of this whole world.
So for part 1 of Queen of Shadows, it ended with finally getting some closure with Arabin, the now deceased king of assassins. She ends the scene with chopping off his head just to make sure that he stays dead, I guess. And then it brings us into part 2, which opens with Manon beating her 4th now. She was her 2nd of the 13 Astron. And you want to talk a little bit about what her reasons are for beating Astron in front of all of the witch covens?
Astron is going against, as we heard, the Cochrane. I mispronounce that every single time.
Croken.
Good grief. Croken witch mentioned that they are trained to have no feelings. They're trained to be monsters. Well, Astron is fighting that a little bit, and she is being insubordinate to Manon and is second guessing her decisions to allow Parrington to impregnate. I use that quotations around that because it's not really impregnating them, using the witches to create witchlings. And so she keeps second guessing her, and Manon is not having that because she's the wing leader.
She is very much her mother's daughter, not that that means anything in her mother's eyes, but she is just trying to uphold everything, how the witches should behave as her mother determines it. It's just kind of a heartbreaking scene because they have been friends. They've known each other for decades and decades and decades, Astron and Manon, and it makes no matter. She just kind of beats her ass in front of everyone. Nice, bloody, violent scene. And then we get a little preview of Kaltain, and Kaltain has been busy or has been kept busy by Duke Parrington and company. And so they go out on a flight mission over a village near the mountains and they test out some stuff. And you want to share a little bit about what happens?
So Kaltain is got a little bit of power, and I know that we heard her say something about it when she was in the dungeons with Selena, but she has some power, and it's called Shadowfire, and she uses that to basically destroy this village on Parrington's orders. So she burns everybody, and it's not like Selena Aylin's magical fire, but it's like shadows and you just see the pain as opposed to the fire. And so she destroys that village.
It was heartbreaking because there were women and children, of course, running around screaming, not knowing what's going on. And they're just flying up high on their wyverns. And Kaltain is doing this from a great distance, causing mass carnage. But she doesn't get everyone. She gets tuckered out. And Parrington commands the wing leader, Manon, and the 13 to land and finish butchering the rest of the village. And they do it. It's so interesting reading their POV because their compass for morality is just so warped and bent. And you read the scene and you're like, am I supposed to like these characters for all of the stuff that they're doing? It was really tough. So we go from that into some stuff finishing up with Aylin because she had squirreled her way into Arabin's will, getting all that money, moving the estate over to the rest of the thieves that have put together this pool of money to purchase his estate back. And one of the parts that I found touching was she has a few moments and exchanges with Adian, and there's a quote and he's just like, let me share this burden. And it's such a powerful statement because Aylin, up until this point, has always been sole survivor survivor, taking care of herself, not relying on anyone, and just making all of these plans and schemes behind the scenes. And he just recognizes that about her and is just like, take a step back and let other people help you. And that was such a touching moment, because how many times have you felt like you should just shoulder the entire burden of whatever too,
Adian's the one character throughout this whole book series so far that I have not found a fault in anything.
Not just male?
Not just male.
Like a male character? Oh.
I know I've said my piece on Kaltain and Lysandra and even Selena. She's done some things and I'm like, really? Should you have done it like that? Maeve is a bitch. So yeah, Adian's the one character, and Rowan, we know how I felt when we first got introduced to him because he was just an asshole to her. Adian's my dude.
Yeah, I've already told Tera this, but she's gonna have to fight me for him. No, he's such a good character. There was a scene between he and Lysandra when she doesn't know what a ghost leopard is, and so they're trying to describe what a ghost leopard is. There's an exchange between them. They're very playful, predatory, glancing at each other with her green eyes, and there's kind of this romantic tension moment, and I was all about it because they both deserve some happiness. So if they're gonna be together, so be it.
So there was also some tension, which I was all about, between Dorian, when his little prince person was in his body, and Manon. And I'm like, ooh, yeah, I'd be down for a Dorian Manon get together.
Yes, that would be interesting with her personality and just how violent her upbringing and background is. And now that he is living with this demon in his head, yes,
she was
very interesting.
She was the only one who could pull him out and get past the demon in him. And then there was that pull. She said that she experienced the pull too. And I'm just like, ooh, yes. Because Dorian needs himself a little Spitfire. He needs excitement in his life.
He needs a very domineering woman. I feel like he has always been the charmed, playful, flirtatious crown prince getting what he wants. And now he's grappling with sharing headspace with someone who is not human and not of this world. And it would take someone like Manon to kind of keep to his level now. It's interesting that you said Manon pulled him out of it, because there was a scene where she faces some of the Vogue, and whenever they get up close, her eyes are golden, right? And they get so fucking freaked out and shaken by this because they will scream out that she shares the eyes of their Vogue kings, the people, the creatures that made them, where they originate from. And it's so many goosebumps.
Well, and did you get that the prince that was impregnating the witches was Roland?
Yes.
That scene was so sad when he was begging to be killed, and the prince that was in him was like, get away from her. She's the what did they say? Descendant of our king or whatever. Which also, if you think about it, makes sense as to why Parrington wants the Blackbeak coven, because all of them share the eyes, which means that they're all descendants of the king. And thus, in my mind, in my theory here, they could then make witchlings that were descendants of the king. So, and then the witchlings are also supposed to be able to house princes and stuff. The more power you have, you can house higher up Vogue. And so I'm wondering
it prevents burnout.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm wondering if they're trying to create things that can house kings, higher up than princes.
No, that's a great point. My first read through of this, I didn't think too much about the eyes and just the amount of power that it took to be stuffed into, flesh and blood body. But it makes sense. There was that scene where I think it was the Rollin scene, and the shadow kind of overwhelms the room. They're in darkness, and all of the witches who didn't have the golden direct eyes, that just had the plain eyes, were all seeing everything and freaked out and screaming in the dark. I am all about it. Manon is one of my favorite characters, and the fact that these creatures tremble in her presence, it's just, she is the opposite to Aelin. She is pretty much her twin, but she's almost like the evil twin of Aelin is how I think about her, and I love it.
We also, since we're in Morath with Manon right now, we also figure out that there is a king, the king, that Brannon and Maeve's boyfriend boyfriend, I don't remember his name, were supposed to have killed. And they didn't. They did not.
Erewhon.
They just locked him up in what is now Morath. And so that becomes more of a like explanation as to why they're doing the things that they're doing in Morath. And it's because Erewhon, his tomb, is there.
This is like Sarah J Maas's Lord of the Rings influence and love coming out, because Morath totally reminded me of like Mordor. Up until this point in the story, we've been operating under the assumption that Erewhon, the risk is that he is going to be brought back. We find out through everything that happens in part 2 that he has been brought back. He has been here the entire time. And so now it's a matter of trying to stay hidden from him because he is all powerful, and shutting it down before even more lives are taken, because there have been huge losses until this point. Back in Rifthold, so we have all that stuff going on in Morath and with the witches and stuff, just inner turmoil, especially with Astrid not seeing eye to eye and kind of undermining, I don't want to say undermining, but she has a moral compass and she cares about Manon as a person. So back to Rifthold, everyone is planning and making choices and stuff that will hopefully put a stop to it in this book, which we know doesn't happen. Rowan and Aelin almost have some sexy time. It's cute how some of these scenes play out. Lorcan, we find out, is a little more cunning than we initially thought in the first part, because we thought that Aelin had thoroughly tricked him in the sewers and had him kill the 6 wordhounds. And it turns out he led them to believe that and still left it for them and made them target Rowan instead.
But we do see that they do pull a little bit of wool over his head, because Lorcan shows up at the keep and Rowan goes out to meet him and basically does an oath to get the ring that Elena gave to Maeve, right? Not Elena. Aelin gave to Maeve. And so that ring is supposed to be able to like thwart the Vogue from taking over or, you know, using their powers against a person. And so Rowan wants that ring so he can give it to Aelin, but Lorcan wants the keys. And so he's like, I know you have one of them. Give it back, or give it to me and I'll take it and I'll destroy all the keys, because he doesn't want Maeve to get them, right? So he does a blood oath, it seemed, with Rowan, and Rowan hands over the amulet in kind of trade for the ring, and then goes back down and talks to Aelin, and we discover that that was a replication amulet that Lysandra's jeweler made for them, and they had stuffed, what did they put in it that made it glow? The old Vogue's ring. So the black ring that the Vogue that they took to Erebin, his ring was in there, so it still gave like an otherworldly like magic
that aura. Yeah.
And so Lorcan thought that that was the true amulet, and it was not.
I love how people are constantly just backstabbing and tricking everyone else and just omitting things and doing all this trickster kind of stuff.
So we find out that Kaltain is also a bit more manipulating and strategic than we originally thought of her. She had attacked and killed the prince that was in her and is basically just pretending that she is still under Vogue control.
She's obviously been through a lot of trauma and growth, going from ditzy, lady of the court wanting to marry the prince to having all of this shit done to her, because I think there's a lot to fill in the blanks of everything. I don't think Sarah J Maas really spells out every little thing that's been done to her, but we can use our imagination and put it together. Like, some bad stuff has happened to her. So she has definitely learned to navigate all of this ugliness and has done a lot of growth in that sense. The fact that she goes from being this stupid court lady to beating a Vogue out of her head and taking back her space is mind-blowing to me. It requires so much strength and power, because as we've seen from being in Dorian's head time and time again, it is terrifying, it is hopeless feeling, and you just want to die. And she has somehow overcome that, which speaks to a lot of who she is and her heritage, probably.
And then on top of that, she has also been cunning in pretending that she is still under their control, and she has still allowed them to do the things that they are wanting to. So like horrible, horrible things to her, because she has to in order for them to still believe that she's under this Vogue control. She's got lot of strength. But we will talk about her again here in just a little bit.
What was Lysandra doing, though? I can't remember what Lysandra was doing to get captured.
It was Arabin's will.
Arabin! Yeah, okay.
So Arabin wrote in his will, or like wrote a letter to the king and turned her in for having magic.
There are some big Lysandra moments in part 2 as well. Even though Arabin is dead, the man still has left his mark, and he made a plan B of sorts to fuck over everyone as much as he could, even in death. And so, with that, he knew Lysandra was a shapeshifter the entire time. So, whenever she was a child and getting pulled into this prostitution life as a little girl, he knew what she was and took advantage of that. And so, upon his death, word gets back to the king that Lysandra is a shapeshifter. And we all know that the king of Otterland, especially, does not appreciate shapeshifters in the kingdom, as they are spies and very, very dangerous. And so, they have her captured. Aelin, who has been bonding with Lysandra, immediately makes a decision, doesn't even have to think about, but we're going to go rescue her. And so she brings everyone, Chaol, Nezrin, Adian. She brings the whole crew to go after Lysandra, who is now, I believe, in Oakwald Forest, is where they end up converging with the witches. And it is such an interesting meeting because Manon and her 13 are summoned, which Manon appreciates so much, to go attend to this witch wagon and to see her grandmother's plans, like what the big secret is and what she's working with the king. There's a meeting place that takes place in the forest, and it is so interesting because Dorian is there as well. You want to talk about it?
And this is where Dorian meets Manon for the first time. And like I said earlier, Manon has the eyes of the king, right? The King Volg. All of the other Volg are afraid of her. Like Sandra mentioned, they're like, no, back away, don't talk to her. And that's what Dorian's prince is saying in his head. Don't talk to her, don't say her name, don't anything her. And you see her be able to pull Dorian out as a human, which is awesome because it shows he's still there.
Yes. She has the power to snap Dorian out of it and give him a moment of consciousness and knowing where he is at. It's almost like her name becomes a sort of prayer in his head. If he can just hear her name, it'll, momentarily bring him back to the here and now. But no one else knows at this point that Dorian is still in there. As they've seen from other people, as soon as they're infiltrated in their mind, the next best step is to just give them mercy and kill them. All of this stuff happens. They break Lysandra out of the dungeon cart that Aelin herself is very familiar with from being hauled off to the salt mines in that when she was Selena. So they sneak around, they capture Lysandra back. Meanwhile, the grandmother witch is with the king, showing him those plans, which Manon does figure out what it is, and we'll get there soon. But they do all of this right under their noses. Chaol decides to go rogue again because he doesn't realize that Dorian is still in there. So now all of a sudden he's like, okay, I love him like a brother. I will put him out of his misery now. So they're all, okay, we're going to get out of here, hightail it back to our safe house. And then Chaol, they're just like, where's Chaol? Where did he go? And he doesn't even go the right direction to go after Dorian. He's just like this, you silly human. He's in the company of all these special creatures, and he is just he's not up to snuff, okay? So he goes the wrong way and ends up having a run-in with Manon and the 13.
Chaol's just a little behind in everything. Just a little slow. I mean, you get more out of him this book, more like realizing he isn't the best, he isn't right, and all of that. And this is the first time that he's like, oh, okay, maybe Aelin was correct. Maybe it is a nice thing to kill him because he would not want to live like this. But boy is just a little slow. And he has to come to it on his own. Like, anybody tells him, and it's a blanket no. But, like, once he's there, he's there. But yes, we get after I diss Chaol for a little bit, we get the interaction between Manon and Aelin. And dear Lord, as Sandra mentioned, these two are like twins. Like, they are feisty, they are fiery, and they are powerful in their own right. You see Manon underestimate Aelin because well, she doesn't have power, right? She's like, oh, you're just stupid. Like, I'm gonna beat you, blah, blah, blah. Aelin is pushing into that a little bit, and she's like kicking the dirt, like, I don't know what I'm doing. But while she's doing that, she is actually making a word mark that is about to trap Manon. And doesn't she say something like very mean to Manon to get her to come towards her?
Oh, she eggs her on with saying, yep, I killed Baba Yellowlegs. Do something about it.
Yep.
And so we finally see that payoff happening from the earlier book whenever Selena had killed Baba Yellowlegs and then covered up the murder of her. We see that playing out now in the reaction on page, and it is so good. I feel like Aelin is a good actress in getting to assume whatever identity she needs to be in that moment. So she chooses to be like a young teenage girl who's doesn't really think past a step or two ahead. She proves Manon very wrong. Manon underestimates her, and that gives them time to get Chaol and get the hell out. This leads to an epic battle between Aelin and Manon, which you love to see it.
Yes. And so this epic battle ensues. Aelin ends up with the upper hand. The temple that they were fighting in ends up crashing down around them. Aelin hears
Astrid.
I was like, Astrid's not right. Astrid yelling for Manon, because as we've discussed, Astrid is not in love with, but loves Manon so much. And so she is seeing Manon falling, or the temple falling around Manon, and obviously it's going to kill her. And Astrid is just so upset about this. You see Aelin feeling a pull to Manon, much like she did to the healer in Assassin's Blade. And so Aelin goes and saves Manon. You see Manon be torn with this because A, she's thankful, but she hates owing somebody.
She hates nothing more than being thrown a bone. Anyone taking any kind of pity or sympathy toward her cannot stand it. It just irks her, which is so hilarious in itself. That juxtaposition between, Aelin and Manon, when Aelin makes the choice to let her live and help her, it's so good, because if it was reversed, Manon would just be like, bye, bitch. but Aelin is just, oh, someone actually cares about her. Like, in Aelin's mind, she's like, if I was screaming after someone like that, like she has screamed after people like that, and she loves them and cares about them. So that humanity comes out, which Manon is working on slowly but surely. Rowan does get injured in this little one-on-one duel, and it is a very bad injury. It's like an arrow wound in his side or something, and he's just bleeding out. And of course, they're on this continent, so magic isn't a thing. He's unable to heal himself, and no one has any powers that they could use and help themselves out. After this fight, there's a lot of time spent kind of on the road and just him propped up healing, and them just kind of calibrating where they're at and making plans for the next steps, because their ultimate goal in this part is to bring down a tower and bring magic back to the continent. Their first big mission in this task to take down the king.
You also see some quippy moments from Aelin about her saving Manon, how she saved her enemy, and she made some quippy comments about Rowan and him being hurt and things, which again just shows that like she went past what she really wanted to do and did what was the right thing to do in the moment, because she really wanted to let Manon die for hurting Rowan, but she did.
That's our girl. She just can't help herself. Always has to help someone, which is interesting because someone made a comment that Manon has a soft spot for broken things. So whether it's a Braxis or whether it's a lead. And you see the same thing in Aelin too. Aelin's like, if there's any kind of potential in someone, it's her soft spot.
Well, and you also see Manon's soft spot a little bit later when Astrid tells her why she is going against her and why she has basically less monster in her than everybody else. And it's because Astrid has fallen in love, and Astrid has been treated horribly by the grandmother and made to come back. And she fell in love with a human, and she was made to come back, and she found out she was pregnant, and then she lost the baby. And the grandmother was like, oh well, not a big deal, kind of thing.
Yeah, the grandmother beat her ass for miscarrying and said she didn't deserve to carry the Blackbeak name or to be a part of of their coven, which is so traumatizing and terrible.
And she branded her basically as worthless, which is why Astra never went back to her human, because she was afraid that he was going to think the same thing about her. Because wasn't it like dirty or something like that? Unclean.
Unclean.
She didn't go back to the human that she loved because she didn't want him to think she was unclean, and that's why she lost her baby. And so she tells a story to Manon as kind of a way of connecting and saying, hey, your grandmother's not always right. She is doing horrible, horrible things to witches and humans and everybody. You need to stop believing her. You need to like form your own thought and go your own way. And this is much like everybody has been trying to tell Chaol this whole time. Like, you need to like think for yourself, because the person that's ruling you is not looking out for your best interest or anybody else's.
I loved how that played out as basically an intervention of Manon with the 13, but it just provided so much more context about why Astrid was so affected and felt so passionately about, the witchling births and breeding in particular. It was a very sore spot for her that she is never and will never probably get over something like that.
Yeah, we see quite a few moments in this part that are both very bittersweet, but tell a lot about the person. And another one of those is Lysandra. Aelin has paid for Lysandra and Evangeline to go free. And the moment Lysandra finds that out is just so heartbreaking and so telling of both of their characters. And that she's like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm here. I want to help you too. It was just so sweet to see that connection.
It just explains so much of the cattiness and seemingly just nonchalance and not caring about anything that we saw from the characters, especially the female characters who were powerless or given no power and no voice in the beginning of the series. It's such a heartfelt moment.
And we see another moment like that with Manon, and we're seeing her grow in her like humanity. And so this moment, she feels a pull. It doesn't specify if it's to Aelin or Dorian at this point, because as we've known, there's a pull to both of them with Manon. She feels a pull to get her back to Rithold. And so she goes back and she kills a Vogue, and she uses his blood to paint messages across the city that she hopes Aelin will come across. And that message is that he is still inside. It's her way of repaying the debt to Aelin for saving her life by telling her that her friend is still alive inside that body and not to kill him. And that moment was just so sweet, because she took it upon herself to make sure somebody else survived. And then we see her do something similar with Elide, kind of a last-ditch effort to protect something close to Aelin.
Elide has had a very tough road this part of the book. So it's while Manon and the 13 are at Oakwald Forest dealing with the king and the matron grandma and Aelin and team, Elide is put into the dungeons. Her uncle Vernon is basically like, you are going to do your duty now. No one's here to protect you. And Elide is in the dungeons for days and days. And she keeps hoping that someone is going to see her, knows that she's missing, just notice anything about her presence not being there. And she loses hope daily, and it's so sad. Elide was probably the character that tugged on my heartstrings the most this book, because not only is her body broken in a sense, like she struggles with basic things and she's had to rely on other skills to help her survive through her life, but now she feels like she has no one. She already lost her parents. She already doesn't have any friends. Her relationship with Manon is very precarious in that she knows Manon is only helping her because she has some witch blood in her. And so Elide is just like, I need to get out of here. Like, she still plans on escaping, even though she said my blood runs blue. And it takes a long time. So after this stuff happens in Oakwald, and then Manon and the 13 fly to Rifthold to write that message on the wall that gives Aelin notice that Dorian is still in there, not to kill him just yet, which shakes up all their plans. Then she finally goes back, and the scene where she helps Elide get out, they run into Kaltain, that whole scene, how it was done, and they switch dresses, and everything that happens in Morath was so just powerful.
It ties in a lot of things that have happened in the past, because Manon tells Elide that Aelin is still alive, that her queen is still alive. And that's powerful for Elide. It gives her some hope back and gives her something to like go for. but also it's, again, Manon trying to repay that life debt that she has to Aelin by giving her, more of her court back. But then you see Kaltain, and good lord, this woman is just so strong. Not just magically, but like how much her humanity's strong, she just has an inner strength that's so fascinating. But so she basically tells Alid that she is going to take her place and that they need to get out. Alid at first is like, no, I don't want you to die. And Manon's like, she wants to die. This is actually like her way of getting out of all of the stuff. And so Kaltain cuts her arm, pulls out a stone, and gives it to Alid with a part of a cloak that they wouldn't let her keep, but it was the cloak that Selena gave her and showed her a bit of kindness in the dungeons when Selena went to visit her, and she knew she was cold, so Selena left her cloak with her, and she said to give it back to Selena Sardathian, something along the lines of, and to tell her, thank you for showing me kindness, a repayment for the cloak you gave me. That scene was just so heartbreaking because you knew what was coming next. You knew Kaltain knew what was coming next. Kaltain goes into the dungeon and she fires up her shadow fire, and she brings the whole fucking place down with her. Something like 2/3 or 1/3 of Morath is gone when Kaltain is gone. You see Alid and Manon see this as they're writing Abraxas.
Until this point, there's so much debate about how much of their humanity is left after they have lived in their head with a Volg prince for so long. There is like something that's not right that's left behind whenever this has happened. She still retains that level of humanity, though, to know what's wrong and right, and to know, like, she mercy kills all of the yellow leg witches that are stuck in the breeding rooms. Like, she kills all of them. She hears their cries, their screams for help, their suffering, and she just takes down, as Tera said, 1/3 of Morath. That was such a redemption arc for Kaltain because she was so dislikable and, poisoning Selena and trying to have her killed and undermine her at every turn and just being just a court bitch. It was sad because I had learned to love her so much and I was interested to see more of her power get used, but in a better way. But the whole sacrifice move was...
And now we know why Sandra was all about her at the beginning when I was like, no, she chose this. She did her own thing because Sandra already knew that she had a redemption arc coming. You also see that stone was part of her power. I'm going to call it out because I think that stone is one of the keys. And so she basically just gave the second key that Aelin is going to have to her. So shifting that power just a little bit from the king to Aelin.
I think Tera is right. I have a feeling she is right, an inkling. You see Duke Parrington scrambling, trying to get his people, anyone that's left, digging through all of this rubble in this fallen mountain to look for this little tiny ass stone.
And one of the other things Manon tells Alid is something else that happened back on Rithold, which is what the hell are Chaol, Rowan, Adian, and Aelin up to? And basically what they're up to is they're going to blow up the freaking tower and bring magic back. And so they have this plan in place. Rowan and Adian are going to go in the tunnels and use the hellfire and set it on fire. And Aelin and Chaol are going to go rescue Prince Dorian. And it looked like Sandra had something to say here.
No, I was laughing the whole time I was reading this because in an earlier episode, like episode 3 or whatever, Tera mentioned she wanted to see hellfire raining down. I'm like, just you wait, because hellfire does rain down. And another comment that you had previously said, Tera, was Chaol has made his bed and now he gets to be in it. And I'm like, oh, it's so on the nose with what happens in part 2 that I just was laughing nervously when you said it.
I am just great at reading signs and and vengeful thinking, which apparently is also what Sarah J Maas is great at. We see Adian and Rowan go down. They are carrying this tub of hellfire, which can just blow up cities. And they're trying to be very careful. And we see, as Sandra mentioned, Lorcan didn't do exactly what Lorcan said he was going to do. And he gave the scent to the word hounds of Rowan. So they have to start fighting these word hounds as they're trying to get this lit. And they were supposed to get this lit by 12 o'clock, right? And so it's supposed to be timed perfectly for Aelin and Chaol to get Dorian Dorian out. The word hounds were not figured into this. So Chaol and Aelin are walking into the palace, and Aelin is pretending to be Selena again, and she has captured Chaol. And so she goes to the king. Obviously, the king plays along for a little bit, but he's like, no, I know exactly what you two are doing. Stop it. And so they're buying time, and then 12 o'clock hits, and nothing happens. Aelin's like, oh no, what's going on? Where's Rowan? Is he safe? And she's worried this whole time. They end up getting into this little fight. Somebody goes to help Rowan and Adian.
Tera says little fight, but it's like Adian and Rowan versus 6 or 7 word hounds, which are these clock tower gargoyle things, basically, that can report back to the king instantaneously. So going back to Aelin thinking she tricked Lorcan into killing them, and him playing like, oh yeah, I did. It was such a rough battle in the sewers. And then he just tricks them right back. The night that he was on the roof and Rowan goes up there to talk to Lorcan and talk about the rings and Maeve and everything, is when he ripped a piece of his cloak or took a piece of it or something. And that's how he gets the word hounds on Rowan's ass.
But then Lorcan shows up, and Lorcan is helping
He does.
them. And so does Lysandra. Like, they're like dying. And Lysandra comes in as the ghost leopard or whatever, and she just like melees. She is like a vicious fighting machine. And she came back. Aelin sent her and Evangeline out, and she's like, no, I need to be back there. I need to help my friend. And so she goes back. I kind of gave away what happens a little bit, because with Lorcan, Adian, and Rowan, we're able to defeat the hounds, and they do blow up the clock tower, and magic comes back. And then that's when Lysandra comes back as the ghost leopard, because she is now a shapeshifter again. So she waylays the Volg guards.
Which, the scene with magic flooding back throughout the continent, it was so cool because Maas wrote it in hopping around different perspectives. So you have Manon in the air with Abraxas feeling like this invisible wave, this whoosh, and then she just has like even more powerful senses, which was so cool. And so you see everyone, like how it's impacting them as this is going on. But in the throne room, Chaol and Aelin are still struggling with their whole little ruse to get Dorian out of there, since they now know that he is still alive in there. We find out that the king has been possessed, whatever you want to call it, but he has been housing the Volg for years, a very, very long time. And you get flashes of the man that is Dorian's father crying out for help. And so it makes you think they made it a point saying Dorian didn't look anything like Holland or his father, like they didn't share the same eyes. The king's eyes were always very black and hard when he was talking to anyone. And now you see his eyes change. So that kind of confirms, yes, Dorian is actually a part of this family. You can kind of put those pieces together. Now you have the king apologizing for all of this horrible stuff that has transpired. And then you have Dorian now, who is like, I don't care, just kill him, don't listen to him, whatever.
Okay, I have 2 things. First one, I did not put that together the way you did. And it makes me think, is Holland also possessed? Like 10-year-old little boy that
We
looks
haven't
different,
seen him.
you know? But 2, you also see that Chaol kind of sacrifices himself, and he stays to fight the king before we figure out that the king is possessed. And so Chaol wants Aelin to get Dorian out, and Chaol is going to stay and fight the king. Aelin and Dorian kind of run, and Aelin slipped the ring on him that is supposed to protect him from the Volg, right? She leaves, Chaol is fighting the king, and then the king catches up with them some way. And that's where you find out that he has been kind of possessed for way longer than anybody knew that these things were around. And he put the magic block in place to protect Dorian from anybody figuring out that he had the magic in him. And so you see a moment where you almost feel sorry for the king, because you see that it was love that brought him to the depths of depravity that he's at. And then you also see that he was fighting the prince in him. And you also hear who is really responsible for everything. And it is Duke Parrington, because he is actually Erewhon. And Erewhon Erewhon's free and has been running amok forever.
Which just paints an even greater magnitude of what Kaltain has been dealing with all by herself over in Morath, it being implanted with the word stone or word key, whatever, and then dealing with Erewhon himself, touching her and doing, God knows what to her. You just feel bad because back in the day when the king found the word key just in the catacombs beneath the palace, he and Parrington were normal guys. They were younger, they were stupid. He went there, and then one thing led to another. They ended up freeing Erewhon, and the rest is history. And so you see the king start to wither away, like literally just shrink and wither away now that he has been freed of the Vogue presence. It makes no difference to Dorian. Dorian he is so cold about it whenever it is Dorian that explodes the glass castle.
Yeah. Dorian and Aelin combine their powers.
Our powers combine
To defeat the Vogue in the king, because he is a minion of Erewhon, so he is stronger than everyone else that they've fought so far. Aelin is fighting him, and Dorian and her kind of combine their powers to finally kill the Vogue minion. And that's when we see the king withering. And then we see Dorian getting so mad at the situation and at his dad and how everything's going that he ends up just destroying the glass castle. And Aelin uses the very last bit of her strength to build a barricade around the glass castle and stop all of that from hitting the city and killing all the people. So she basically melts this glass and makes a barricade around the city. Again, she will sacrifice anything to save innocent people, even herself and everybody else that she cares about who are within that glass castle.
Yeah, we find out more. So the grand plans that Manon's grandmother has is witch towers. So these ancient mirrors, which are amplifiers essentially is what they will be for someone that can do like a shadow fire so that they can cause even larger mass scale damage than say a village. So we're talking continents at this point. So we see that stuff is in the works at the end of the part. Parrington still very much has plans. The grandma's going to build these witch towers, have them brought down. That is all still underway. We see Lorcan when Aelin shielded the city after the explosion that Dorian caused, and which killed his father, which he has very little remorse about at first. We see Lorcan beat Aelin over the head to take back, I think it's the ring that he had taken from Maeve. We also see some moments of levity, which I think are needed when all of this crazy stuff is happening. I mean, you have Kaltain killing everything Carrie style, just bring it all down. You have like so much shit happening. And then when Lysandra was, because she's been a ghost leopard, she has been chewing these nasty black blood valg, ripping them apart, consuming them, and she's like holding her stomach trying to talk to Lorcan, and she ends up like vomiting all over him at one point.
Multiple times.
Have never Lorcan just stands there because out of all of the characters, he is so just stiff lip, takes his job seriously. He's kind of an asshole. He's a jerk. He is blood sworn to Maeve, knows she's a bitch, but is doing everything he can to protect her. And then he's just dealing with that.
But you do see a little bit more of him in his honor, because the reason he helped Rowan and Adian is he scented that Adian is Gavriel's son. And he's like, Gavriel's still my brother, and there's no way I could go home knowing that I allowed his son to die and didn't try and help. And I'm like, oh, thank you, because I love Adian. And I don't care who or why you help protect Adian. Protect Adian.
I was going to ask you how you felt about Lorcan as a character.
I mean, I don't like him so much, but that one choice is a positive in my mind.
That was a good move. I will say the comedy surrounding that just seems to follow Lorcan is one of the treats that I divulge in this series.
And then to end this kind of long, lots of stuff going on, we see that Rowan is healing because he got his ass kicked a little bit before his magic came back. He's healing. We see Aelin is healing because she again also got her ass kicked. She
got knifed.
Yeah, we see Dorian kind of coming to terms with everything that's happened and the death of Sorsha and the death of his dad, what's happening around him. And then we also see Chaol, who in his fight with the king, which I think is the reason Dorian didn't give a shit, because the king said he killed Chaol. And so Dorian's like, what the hell? No. And that was his like the thing that broke the camel's back for him. But we do see that Rowan had ended up saving Chaol, but Chaol is paralyzed. And they are wanting to send him to the healers down south in the Terry Chesme, which
Tori Chesme, yeah.
Which coincidentally isn't enough, is where Nezrin is from. And so she is going to go with him. And so we see them gearing up to set off for this healer's school. And we also see the rest of our group setting off for Terrasen after they've healed a little bit. Another scene that I loved was right after shit fell. Everything is like a massive amount of destruction going on. Aelin goes out, she breaks out of her little like barricade thing, and she goes out to talk to the people, and she is like, you will behave, and you will let Dorian be king, and you will do all these things, or I will have a problem with you. And just her mommy voice came out there, like, you will do what I say. Like, I am the queen of Terrasen, and Dorian is now the king of Otterland. You will listen.
I mean, it was slightly dictator, like, I'm ruling you until Dorian is better. But yes, she came out embracing full queen. I was happy for everyone except for two people, Dorian and Elide. Dorian, you're left with him feeling very hopeless and lonely. Lonely is like a theme that just permeates Dorian from here on out. He is being left alone in Rifthold while everyone else is continuing on to Terrasen and doing all of that stuff. And he is very much by himself. Even Chaol is not going to be there because, as Tera said, he will be in the southern continent. And then we have a lead who Manon dumps off kind of in sight of Rifthold and is like, just go north, keep going, find your queen. And so Elide with her busted leg is hobbling to the city, trying to get reunited with Aelin in time as Aelin and party is leaving.
Well, I love how Manon told Elide that her queen is alive, because she told her basically, your queen just destroyed Otterland. Like, she killed the king. She's a badass. Go find her.
Yeah, which has to be uplifting for Elide because her mom died protecting her and sacrificed her everything to make sure that she made it out safely. So it's so many little poignant moments like that that are just But part 2 ends with them taking 3 weeks to travel to Terrasen, and then Aelin beholding it, the place that she hasn't seen since she was a child and was found by Erebin and seen. So now we move on to Empire of Storms. How are you feeling about it?
I'm feeling really good. I got my MAAS-acre that I wanted.
Yes.
I feel like everybody has gotten like the first like battle out of their system. I feel like we're on a better ground with Manon. I think she's going to come around to the right side at some point. And I really hope Manon and Dorian end up together, because that would be freaking awesome. I think we're on the right path.
When she's watching him in the moonlight at like 3 a.m., I'm like, can she please just like keep visiting him to make sure he's okay? Because he's so alone.
And then Chaol and Nezrin are together, and that's a good thing. Now we just need to like, maybe Adian and Lysandra can get together and like everybody can live their happy lives. Because another part that we did not mention that was such a feel-good moment is when Aelin gave Lysandra her own property and a title. She is now Lady Lysandra. And Lysandra's like, well, you know what? Your people aren't going to like this because I'm like basically just a whore. And Aelin was like, no, if they don't like it, they can fucking get out. Like, I don't give a shit. You are my person and I get to choose who I give this to. And I was like, ooh, yes.
Yeah, if you're in her circle, you're in her circle. I love when she's like, yeah, you could call it Lysandrius or Lysandraland, or she's like, I love those friendship building scenes and the dinner toward the end. The dinner was a really sweet scene too, just parallel to the last dinner that they kind of had when they were kids.
It does a good job of mixing the death and carnage with these moments that you're like, oh, I love these characters so much more because I saw like the good in them the whole time.
You're that person to me, Tera. You're my friendship people.
I'm death and carnage too, so.
You can be when you want. But anyway, we hope you enjoyed this discussion of part 2 of Queen of Shadows by Sarah J Maas. Stay tuned for next Tuesday when we release part 1 of Empire of Storms. And then there were just 3 books left. So until next week, we will see you then. Bye.